Over the last 10 years, I've used Zapier, Make, and N8N extensively. In this video, I'll show you each platform's strengths and weaknesses by building the same automation in all three, but only one of them is going to work. First though, let's look at the main difference between them. So when it comes to automating processes, there are broadly two approaches you can take. Each have their own pros and cons. So the first is linear automation. This is what Zapier has always excelled in, where you can say, when this happens, I want to do this, and then do that. So maybe when we receive an email from a customer, add it to our CRM and message the team on Slack. The other approach, which is becoming more popular with AI and AI agents becoming more prevalent, is node-based. This is where each step is itself a node where you can jump off and do things. So it can still be somewhat linear. You could say, when this happens, do this, and then that. But you could, for example, say, when doing this step, I want to message ChatGPT in the background, and maybe we want to store that information in a database or in memory. And maybe to make the ChatGPT prompt come back with something slightly more helpful, maybe we want to connect it to our Google Drive and give it a bit more context, a bit more information. And while we're doing that, maybe we want to trigger a separate workflow to do this and then that. So this is more node-based, where each step you can kind of jump off and go in different routes rather than following a sort of this, then that approach. Now, you're probably already immediately seeing the first advantage and limitation between these, which is linear automation is very simple. Node-based can be a little bit more complex, a bit more advanced. That is both a pro and a con. With node-based automation, you can do a lot more, but it does get a bit more complex. As an example, this morning I built a node-based automation for a WhatsApp AI agent where I can just message a WhatsApp number and it will go to my YouTube account, get analytics and tell me what's going on my YouTube account. There is no way that I could easily do that in a tool like Zapier, but I can do that very easily. That's a very basic use case for something like N8N. Make.com sits somewhere between these. Make.com I sort of think of as a slightly more advanced linear automation tool. You can do some elements of node-based automation in Make, but its UI is more linear. So I share this because this is the most important difference between the platforms. We'll build some automations in a moment. We're going to see some different limitations, but the question I would be starting with if I was deciding between Make, N8N, and Zapier is, am I automating simple linear processes, or am I trying to build complex automations like AI agents to automate my entire marketing department? That is going to determine more than anything else which of these platforms is right for you. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about the automation we're going to build. So the automation I'm going to be building is seemingly quite simple. When I upload a video file into Google Drive, we're going to get some information from Airtable and then upload the video to YouTube. Now, this appears to be linear, so I'm going to start by trying to build this on Zapier. So I'm going to have a go at building this in Zapier. Rather than me clicking buttons like it's 2024, I'm just going to tell the Copilot to build it for me. So I've asked it to basically monitor a Google Drive folder for video files, and then using the name of the video file, it's going to search for a row in Airtable, get some information about that video, and then upload the video file to YouTube. So let's see how it does. Okay, Copilot hit some bugs, so it looks like I am doing this manually. Okay, perfect. So that's got one of the video files that I've uploaded. So we're going to continue with that. VID field, and we're going to look for this number. Yay, it's come back with something. Perfect. So now we're going to connect to YouTube. Okay, so I've set everything in our automation up. This should now be working. So when we drop a file into the Google Drive, it should get the number from the title of the video, find the row in Airtable for that, and then upload the video to YouTube. So let's see if this works. So this is kind of interesting. Zapier have come back saying that this has worked successfully. You can see all green ticks here. But if I go to my YouTube channel, we can see that no new video file has been uploaded. And what's even more interesting to me is that you can see here on the data in and out that the video file that I've given Zapier to upload to my YouTube account, this best AI avatar generators one, is not actually what Zapier have sent. They've sent their own video file called Build Your First Zap with Zapier. Now, the reason they do this is to kind of get around API quota limits. Zapier has a lot of issues around, particularly when file sizes get too big, them kind of hammering their API quotas and not being uploaded successfully. So this is something that really bothers me about Zapier, is like often you'll create these zaps that are seemingly quite simple and Zapier will tell you that it's working, and then just suddenly one day you'll find that it's not been working or it's been turned off and you've got a ton of errors, and it's not particularly clear why it's failing. I only know this because this is something I've had to debug manually with support, and I know that they have issues with this. So this is where I kind of have mixed feelings about Zapier. On the one hand, it's really easy to use. It's very simple to build, and for simple linear processes, it's really good. But the moment you start doing anything remotely complex or trying to move files around, it does just seem to run into issues. So next, let's have a look at make.com. So I've gone ahead and built the exact same automation in make.com. We've got 5 modules. So we're watching for files in a Google Drive folder. When a new file appears, we're going to download that file. We're then going to extract the number from the file name, use that number to find a row in Airtable, which contains things like the title and description. We're then going to upload the video to YouTube. So putting this together was very simple. Everything in make.com is kind of drag and drop. You just click add modules that you want. Very similar to Zapier, but a nice kind of, I quite like the horizontal workflow. And as I was kind of alluding to earlier, you can also sort of branch off and have sort of multiple branched workflows. So let's give this a test and see if this works. Let me get rid of that Gmail. Okay, scenarios paused because of exceeded limits. So I am on a paid plan on Make.com. This is one of the big frustrations that I have with Make. Particularly, they've recently moved to a credit-based pricing system. Now, a typical video file for me will be anywhere from 500 meg to a gig. And if you look at Make's pricing, you can see that they have a maximum size that you can use within Make.com. So on the free plan, you can only move files around that are 5 megabytes, so basically nothing. Even on the pro plan, we're still at 250 meg. Now, I need to be on the enterprise plan in Make in order to do any kind of automation with files bigger than 500 megabytes, which to me seems kind of insane and makes this pretty much unusable. I don't want to be paying thousands of dollars every year to be able to do a pretty simple automation. And similarly, I've run into other issues where I've hit the data bandwidth quotas as well. I just find with make.com, like, I feel like I'm constantly being kind of pushed onto the higher tiers, which makes it largely unusable for me. Now, it's not an inherent problem. It's not like you can't build these automations, but it does just mean if you are working with large files, you're gonna have to be on a pretty high priced plan for make.com. Now, the one saving grace with make.com is that although I'm not a fan of how they've structured their pricing tiers, it is generally more affordable than Zapier, particularly when you start building lots of automations. And you can tend to do more in Make than you can in Zapier. I think of it as a slightly more powerful, slightly more advanced version of Zapier, perfect for people who are kind of hitting the limits of Zapier, but perhaps not comfortable with the idea of something like N8N. Now, speaking of which, we're going to look at N8N in just a moment. If you want to see a side-by-side comparison of all their pricing, I've put together a comparison document that you can get in the description below. So let's lastly have a quick look at building this in N8N. So I've gone ahead and built the same automation in N8N. So you can see we're triggering this workflow when a new video arrives in Google Drive. So if we fetch a test event, you can see we're getting a video called vid91 Google Sheets N8N. Now remember that it's vid91. That's going to be useful in a second. Next, we're doing something called an AI transform. This is a really cool node that instead of me having to know how to get that number, that 91 from the video file, I can just tell it, I'm trying to get a numeric ID from a video file name. I want to extract the number as the output. It's then gone ahead and written some JavaScript for me. So I've not written this, it's done this for me. I can then run that node and you can see it's outputting 91. So really quick, if you're doing any kind of like transforming or trying to extract things from file names, this is a really helpful node to just kind of quickly vibe your way through it. So we've got the output as the number. We're then using that number to search for a row in Airtable. So you can see I'm just filtering by formula, vid equals, and then I'm passing this number from the previous step. Execute that step, and that's going to find a row which has got like the title and all the information about the video. Then this is where it gets interesting. So previously, I tested this by using the YouTube upload video node, similar to what we did in Make, similar to what we did in Zapier. And what we saw with Zapier and Make is that they didn't work for various different reasons, but basically because you need a lot of memory and a lot of bandwidth in order to upload large files. Now, similar thing happened with N8N. When I used that node, it basically caused N8N to crash, to run out of memory, and have a bunch of issues. Now, N8N has kind of got an interesting workaround where they've got this node called upload post. Now, this is a separate tool. So you'll have to sign up for this. I'm not trying to sell anything. This is completely free to use. You'll need to create an account here, and basically you can then use this node, which does some clever things, but essentially allows you to work with large files and overcome some of those quota limitations that Zapier and Make have. Now, this is not a tutorial about how to upload videos to YouTube. This is a tutorial about the difference between them. But I think it's worth sharing this because this is kind of representative of what some of the strengths that N8N has, which is that a lot of these kind of technical issues that you would run into with Zapier and Make, N8N has kind of got these interesting workarounds because it's a little bit more aimed at slightly more technical users who have kind of figured out some of these challenges. So for that reason, generally you can build a little bit more in N8N that you might run into issues when using something like Make or Zapier that are a little bit more rigid in how you kind of work with them. So with that, let's test this and see if it works. I hope it works, otherwise this is going to be a pretty bad video. So let's execute our workflow and see what we get. It's doing its thing. Okay, we got green ticks, which in N8N we can generally trust. That normally actually means it's worked. So let's go to content, and there we go. We can see that's starting to upload. Easy, job done. Now, if I was just building automations like this, like fairly simple linear automations, like honestly, I would probably stick with something like Zapier or Make, because N8N is going to be a bit overkill. But the reason why I'm increasingly leaning towards N8N and finding myself building more things here is that node-based approach to automation where we can add AI agents just means generally I can make every step a little bit smarter. Like, to show you how simple this would be, we could just add an AI agent in here. We could then give this access to ChatGPT, OpenAI, and you could give this a prompt and say, take my Airtable information, or let's say like, take this title and write a description and then pass this into the upload. So this is why I quite like it, because trying to do this, you can do this in Make, it's a few more steps. In Zapier, it's a little bit trickier to do this, but I find that being able to build these kind of AI agent-based workflows in N8N, it just makes it a little bit easier, and this is kind of the advantage for me of N8N over the other two. But N8N does have a bit of a learning curve, it is a bit trickier to use. Now, if you want to learn more about N8N and to build more powerful automations like this, I'd recommend watching this video.